Hello, everybody. Hello, Gravitrons. I'm More Gravity. Let's play chess. Okay. Doing good, Jord. There's way to rally on that. Add this to some of my collections. Okay. Maybe we'll go over this game. So, before we do that, looking at this chart here, looks like the game broke actually kind of early. Move 7 or 8. Then black was behind by about a bishop and a pawn for a short period of time. Was ahead by a bishop and a pawn for a short period of time. Later, white was able to wrestle the position towards his, her, or they way after black made the mistake queen to c6, attempting to pin the knight on b5, except that when the knight moves to c7, not only is he forking rook and king, but then also for the queen to capture on c7 would require the rook to recapture on c7, or would allow the rook to recapture on c7, netting a huge material benefit for white. So that's the move my opponent made, and so I chose instead to sacrifice my queen on c7. It's a defensive queen sacrifice, and then kingside castles to keep my king safe. These knights are protecting each other, so that helps with things. The rook might not sacrifice himself as readily. He could. The rook could play to rook takes c7, then it would be, or sorry, rook takes d7, then it would be knight takes d7, and then after queen takes d7, and maybe bishop to f6 or something, white would have gone. White would have won 6 points of material between the two knights, and lost only 5 points of material in the rook being lost on d7. Not only that, but when the bishop moves to f6, then some of black's center collapses. For instance, queen takes d6, and maybe there's even enough for, regardless of how black plays, maybe just barely gets in, rook to e8. And after queen takes d6, there are variations where knight takes e5, and then bishop takes e5, queen takes e5, so long as black doesn't have a rook on e8. That opportunity slipped away, and black played on. Down, black's queen is gone, but this game in material terms is not over. You can see here that white has about the equivalent of 2 pawns more material than black. So we play on, struggle as we may, we play on, and knight takes e4, puts these knights in this nice symbiotic protectorate or protectorship. They're protecting each other, and a big blunder here with knight to g5. Black eventually finds the correct piece to recapture. I thought for over 30 seconds on this move, and was trying to figure if I should capture the rook on d6 or the knight on g5, and how that would affect other things. But then I saw, wait a minute, my bishop, and the bishop's kind of disguised here. When the black bishop is on the back rank, we're used to seeing it on f8, not g8. So this bishop is kind of disguised here on the back row. I said, wait a minute, bishop takes g5. Wait a minute, bishop takes g5. And black is now doing well, relatively. Some more mistakes, allowing the exchange to slip out of white's hands. And for want of something concrete to do, I played rook to c8, and maybe now we have some x-ray attacks coming. For instance, knight to b7, attacking white's rook as well as white's queen. Right, so here we have this attack on both pieces. My opponent found, I think, the only move that salvages the board, and so I, for want of something better to do, just sort of presented him a challenge: not capture the free piece on d6, because it's not free. I'll then capture on c2. And with the trade of rooks, this position is still in contention. Black has more material, although some of black's material is, look, no one protecting the knight on d6, no one protecting the bishop on g5, no one protecting the pawn on e5, no one protecting the pawn on e7. So I have to challenge myself to fix that. I want to figure out how to fix that and consolidate, all with just 30 seconds, all with just 36 seconds left on the clock. And it helps to have some blunders here by black. It helps to have a nice, clear blunder as white tries to get closer and closer to put checkmate against black on g7. I show that I know how to turn the tables with rook takes h2 check. And the only move, right, this is the only move, almost the only move, is this to the other move that would be checkmate immediately with rook takes h5, checkmate. But even the better move of those two, king to g5, still loses white's queen. There's a king on f6, capture the queen, white captures, but black's gonna promote on a1, and it's not fun, but I can do this. This board, and I have it's white's turn to move when I have 12.5 seconds. In certain settings, I can do this, especially if I have pre-move purchased. You have to, I was told you have to purchase pre-move. It's a subscriber-only benefit, so I'm allowed to pre-move my moves. I'm pretty sure I did that a few times here. Not every time. Just some of these were pre-moved. I want to get to f3 to halt the efficacy of a pawn from g3 to g4 advance. If my opponent's going to move pawn to g4, I want it to be a bad move, not a good one. And my opponent skirts away, so we're starting to pick up pawns. Now you would look at, so we pick up a pawn. You look at a position like this and think, with enough time, you think queen e3 check right away. You know, the king's got to move away somewhere, and then we get the pawn on f4. Sometimes that's the way to do it. You take a little bit of time out to think. I had 9.6 seconds left. So my thoughts were, whatever good thought comes to mind first, that's what I'll play. I said, queen to g4. She's protected. She's protecting. One way or the other with the pawn on f4, not my concern, because I have a pawn on the h file that's going to go all the way ram jam down white's throat to promotion on h1. See, here it goes. Right, and white is just being pushed back more and more. Now we're on pre-moves for these last two moves, so our clock doesn't show as much time off, as the clock didn't tick all that much time off. If you're wondering, pre-move is when it's white's turn to move here, and I'm telling the computer move to b2 no matter what. So it's a little bit swashbuckling. It's a little bit courageous, brave. But what black's move is going to be queen to b2 no matter what. You know, if king to b4 and then queen to b2 check, and I've also pre-moved queen to a1. Well, what about if you know the next one is king to a3 and then the queen comes on a1, and what if he could attack here? But no, because these queens are linked and there's no capturing a queen that's protected, not by a king, right? So this is all played out, and as you'll see down here, 8.5 seconds I have here. He moves, then 8.4, because it takes off just that 1/10 of a second to make sure that it's clear that that clock is indeed running. Even pre-moves cost a unit of time, in this case a 1/10 of a second. So the king moves to a5, and then the pre-move comes in right at 8.3, right? That same 1/10 of a second. So then white is checkmated and the game is over. I was getting back to an earlier point. After I won the queen and made this queen, we had some situation like this, where I'm there mostly to capture on g4 if the pawn moves. But when that finally occurred, I played queen to g4 and realized that the h pawn is totally clear all the way up the board. There's no way with these other pieces, with black's other pieces in place, there's nothing to stop him, right? The queen will always have the majority of the g file, even continuing to g6. So this is all protected, and the king can't cross or penetrate the line on the h file, neither here nor there nor back again. And even black's king is covering invasions along g7. Look, it doesn't have to be analyzed in that exact way. You could also say, well, black's not gonna get across this diagonal or this horizontal, but in this case actually white first of all, and white could travel to f2 is like the clearest try, but with your queen sitting on g4 there is no way to break through. Obi-Wan, you're just gonna have to wait to help out, that kind of stuff. So yeah, the second queen, and then forget about f4. He's standing there, you know, no need to incur unnecessary casualties or captures there. And then queens work together to force checkmate, and the game is over. I think earlier we talked about this game. Let's revisit this game. Is there anything more I have to say about that? So this game was just a nice, solid, accurate game of chess. And a good more gravity win. It's a good rook lift too that it made the winning of the queen possible. I gave back a little bit of material. I still had enough with the exchange on a pawn. Now just eating up material on the king's side here. White trudges on, and the only long range piece on the board. Alright. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Gravitrons. I'm More Gravity. Have a great night.